Yo, 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 what's goody spirit in the building? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Kueen Talk. Today we have a very special guest. But before we get into it, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, that like button, and leave a comment. For those that are new, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today we have Han Lu. Hey.
Hi, my name is Yan Lu. My pronouns are he, him, his. Um, I'm originally from Wichita, but currently living in Overland Park, and I identify as a homosexual.
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 Homosexual. So I met Jan when we were at Glisson, Kansas. 5 years ago? So you
Almost
said that
six now.
six
Yeah, almost
now?
six.
Um, and I don't even remember I was the student coordinator and you were the policy or the,
At this point, I don't remember
yeah, I was,
because I got kicked out.
oh, yeah, I do remember all of that. I do remember all that. But that's where I originally met you from, and I feel like we made a good connection there. Although how it ended, but you and we were still cool and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, and what got you into Glisson, Kansas to start with?
So at the time, I was in my final years. Well, my first final year at WSU for the BSW program, the Bachelor's of Social Work program. And so when I was talking to the person organizing the practicums for the internships, she was just asking like, oh, like, what do you want? What kind of population do you want to work with? And I was like, possibly like K through 12 kids, and then possibly maybe kids that are in the LGBTQ population. And so Glisten was the one that popped up, and that's where I ended up.
Are you so you graduated from WSU with your social work? Is that what you pursue now too? Did you navigate into that now? Are you still working with the queer kids?
So, not exactly. I mean, I graduated at the best time of everyone's lives in 2020.
Yeah.
And so I kind of bounced around a lot. I worked a lot of different jobs. And so right now I'm currently trying to get back into banking, actually. I worked for a
Okay.
bank for a little bit and I actually really, really liked it. And so social work has kind of taken a space in the back burner for now. I
Yeah.
still want to in the future because one of my main goals is to potentially become like a school counselor or like a college counselor, just to help kids find their path because that's something I needed when I was growing up. But yeah, so right now it's not a priority, but right now it's trying to make money.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I actually did the same thing. So I graduated in 2019. And when I traveled and then yeah, COVID hit. So I was like, man, do I really want to do this? And I kind of got in like the same similar situation of just like trying to figure out what I really wanted. So I totally get where you're coming from there. You mentioned that like you needed guidance and that's why you want to pursue that. So what was your upbringing like growing up? So
I am grateful to have grown up in I would say, at the time it was probably considered middle class family. Um, and that's basically just the prospect that we would take like one major vacation a year, usually either to visit like family in California or visit family in Vancouver. And so I'm grateful for that because I know that a lot of people don't have that sort of privilege to even like leave the city really.
yeah.
Um, and so as when we were growing up, it was better than when my brother was growing up, who's 8 years older than me. When he was growing up, my family wasn't making quite as much money as they did when I was born. Like, thankfully, right before I was born, my mom had just gotten into like a pretty stable job, and my dad had had a stable job for a few years, and so it was kind of very easy
Yeah.
to live for a
They
while.
finally figured it out.
Hmm.
Yeah. What was it like for you? Like, when did you come out as homosexual?
Ooh, ooh. So in high school, I had like a feeling that
Okay.
I was not straight. Um, but I definitely avoided it because I thought, like if I do come out, like everything's gonna change, everything,
Hmm.
my life's gonna be ruined and
Yeah.
everything like that. So technically, I didn't come out until probably my first year of college, And I still remember when the first person I came out to was my friend KJ, and she was like, "Okay, is this new?" And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, "It's not new, Jan. It's not new."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
after that, it became a lot easier to just be like, "Hey, like."
Yeah, and that was just like towards like your friends group and
Mhm.
whatnot, not really towards your family yet. Right?
No, there. To make a long story short, I think my senior year of high school, I started dating this guy, and when we broke up, like a month later, I didn't eat or do very much for like 3 days, and my mom noticed, and so I like somewhat came out to her at that point, but at that point, I thought I was bi, and
Okay.
so that's how I came out to her, and she was like, "Well, that's fine as long as you date a girl," and I was like,
Okay.
"Okay,"
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And
and yeah.
and then so did you have a conversation ever since then? Like have you had a conversation with your either parent?
Not really about sexuality. They don't really tend to pay attention to that. Although my dad is a bit conservative, and so I just kind of avoid that conversation altogether.
Okay.
Hmm.
So you did never have a conversation with your father at all like you did your mother.
Nope.
Have you brought any friends around family that
Uh,
were actually partners?
yes and no. Um, I never advertised it as such, and
Yeah.
so it would just be like, "Hey, my friend's coming over," and we would just hang out and then go home. So, but typically, I would try to hang out at not my house
Yeah.
to make it easier.
Yeah. So where is your comfort zone of being your authentic self?
Outside of the house, great. Like,
Yeah. Oh, so anywhere outside
um,
the house, you're yourself, and
mm-hmm. Because like I mean, every year I get my nails done during June. My friends all know that I'm gay, so I'm pretty comfortable there. And I mean, sometimes I think like, oh, like what if they knew? What if they knew that I was attracted to men and that they would probably not have grandchildren traditionally? But then I'm like, I don't really care. It's my life. They paved the way, and I'm grateful that they had made those sacrifices so that I could have the life that I'm living right now. But at the same time, it's my life, and it's kind of my choices that are leading me forward.
yeah, for sure. And you feel like, say they see this podcast, and you are at the point to where, like, in your journey, you're okay with whatever it may come from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm outside the house now, so they can't
Yeah.
really do much of, in
Yeah.
terms of like, I'm gonna take away your phone. Anyway.
Yeah, so yeah, that does make it easier. Just like being an adult now, like this is my own life. I pay my own bills. Like, yeah. Do you feel like that's why you moved to Overland though? Do you feel like you?
I mean, before I moved to Overland Park, I had already moved out of the house for about a year,
Mhm.
just to live with some friends. But my main motivation to move to Overland Park was that my brother's been out there for like over 10 years now. And so like we've always been close growing up, and it was like he was like, "Well, come up here. There's more opportunity. There's more things to do, and then
Yeah,
there really is more
yeah,
things to do than in Wichita."
definitely.
So yeah, that's
So how you and your brother's relationship? He knows that you.
he wasn't always accepting of it. So it's funny because when I came out as bi, he was one of those people who were like, "That's not fair. Like, why do you get to like both men and women?" And
Huh.
I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting take."
Yeah, I've never
And
heard
but
that.
he's come around to it. He's like, I don't care. Like
Okay.
you do what you want to do.
Well, that's good. So, do you interact like or bring people around like your brother while you're in Overland Park? Then, like,
I have brought partners over, and like I was like, hey, like this is who I'm seeing right now. My brother's like, I don't care, keep the place clean.
okay,
And so that was when I was still living with him. I actually recently moved out on my own with one of my best friends, like back in May, beginning
yeah.
of May. So
Nice.
mhm.
Well, that's good that you have someone. Or is it just you and your brother? Do you have other siblings?
Nope, just me and my brother.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, it's good that you have that relationship with him. Like, he's open. I know men can have like their ideas of like what gay men and stuff like that, and have their own like I don't know ways about it. So it's good that he's opening up for you. That's awesome. What do you do now in Overland Park?
So right now I am unemployed.
Okay.
I'm actually interviewing for a few places, but ever since I've been in Overland Park, I've worked in banking, which is what I was used
Yeah.
to. But I think around January, February last year,
Hmm.
I was like, maybe I should use my degree. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh man. And so I actually got into a job working with mental health, adult mental health. And I worked there for I think about 8 months, and I did not do great at it because of my own shortfallings. I don't know. Like I was just going through a rough patch, and then that translated into my work, and I got fired. Um, I worked as a mail carrier for the USPS for a short stint. It was like maybe 2, 3 months. That was not the worst job I've ever had, but it kind of gave me a lot of different perspective of like how the world works. Because I'm
Yeah.
just like, what do you mean mail goes through like a multi-million-dollar like machine that organizes everything and
Wow.
like shoots it everywhere and then also gets things wrong?
Oh.
And so, and I had like the longest like walking route apparently of the station. And so
Yeah.
every day I was walking like, how, I mean, I think at the time my phone was active, and so it would say like 20,000 steps per day on average.
Damn.
I was like, oh man. I was really fit though. It was very
Yeah.
nice.
Nah. Shout out to them. That is a lot of work.
And then I found a job in foster care um, with children, and I didn't dislike the job, but they definitely could do better in terms of training and getting people ready for the job.
Hmm.
And so, like, my first mental health job I got fired from was because of me, but like this more recent one was, I want to say not because of me, because it was just, it's a lot. It's a very extremely hard job to see kids in certain situations,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, by the way, it's your job to get them out of here. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
thanks. How do I do that? And they're like, you'll figure it out. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot that that system specifically has a
Hmm.
lot of work to do for sure. Um, I you've tested out a few things.
Hmm.
I didn't. I tested out a few things as like the internship, but I didn't. I haven't done it as like a full time gig. What do you? So you want to do the banking stuff eventually?
Yeah, it's very stable. It's kind of an easy way for me to get what I want out of a job, which is usually just to help people get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with finances, it's a very touchy subject for a lot of people. So it's just like, hey, I'm here to help, and they're like, okay.
Yeah. So in Overland Park, do you feel like you said, there's a lot more opportunities and just like in Wichita, specifically in like the queer community. Did you experience that at all, like in Wichita while you were here?
So in Wichita, when I was, I guess, in college, I think XY had recently opened up as one of like the more like open gay bars to the community. Because I mean, there was, of course, I heard of like Fantasy. There's Club Rain, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time, Boomerang was probably one of the first like gay clubs that I was old enough to actually get into because it was 18 and up at the time. But I mean, in terms of the queer community here, um, since I didn't really come out into college, I didn't have that much like time or experience with the queer community here.
Okay.
But it was really nice to see like the pride events go from like something kind of small and maybe like what 70, 80 people to like now
Yeah.
hundreds of people that are pouring out in support for the community. So it's been nice to see that sort of course of change that's happened recently.
Yeah. So did you experience Overland Park's Pride?
So I Overland Park is weird. Casey is kind of weird in terms of that's the main difference that I've noticed between Wichita and Kansas City is that Wichita is like one big community, right? Like even if you live in like Derby, Prairie Village, not Prairie Village,
Derby, Mays,
yeah,
yeah,
like the
Goddard, yeah.
right.
We're all
It's like
Wichita.
we're all Wichita, right? Like even if you live in those places, you're not like, no, I'm from Derby. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a Wichitan, and it's like, oh okay. But up there, it's very more like secluded, I guess. Like, but Kansas City is bigger than I ever thought it would be. Because I
Mm.
like when I was visiting my brother, I thought it was like, oh, it's like, Johnson County and like a little bit of downtown.
Yeah.
But then it's like Gladstone, Lee's Summit, Raytown, Raymore, and like all of these other cities. And so there's a lot more separation, I guess. There is an overall KC Pride event that happens every year, and that's really fun because it's a huge event. Like the park that they hosted at for the past 2 years is massive. So yeah, it's just like Wichita but bigger,
Hmm.
but also more separated.
So you didn't get to experience like the? Did you go to Kansas City Pride or
Mhm.
did? Okay.
It's really fun. I went with friends last year and this year, and so it's a lot. Like it's a lot of vendors. It's a lot of it's nice to see a lot of businesses that are supporting the community, and so it's just a little different. It's a little bit
Yeah.
different. It's a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Do you find like there's a lot more people of color as well? No, you still feel like it's pretty.
Same ratio, just
Yeah.
more people. So
Yeah.
you feel like there's more, but then it's the same ratio of
Yeah.
like white to
Yeah.
POC.
I was, I guess, like, do you put yourself in like situations of like more people of color there though? Like, what's your friend group look like? Do you have like queer people of color that you hang out with?
So I try to. I mean, my roommate slash bestie is a queer woman of color, and she, like, we've known each other for like 7 years now. Shout out to Desi. Um, and so it's a little difficult for me at least because since college I've been more of a homebody.
Okay.
Although there is something recently that my friend Desi and I have been doing or participating in, which is called Queer Bar Takeover in Kansas City. Have you heard of that?
I haven't. That sounds dope
So
though.
it's really cool. Basically, it's this organization. They take over like a stereotypically straight bar and just make it a gay bar for a night. And it's really fun. They play really good music. This past month was at this place called the Westport Landing, and so it was a really cool. It was just really cool to see like. I like typically this is like the TVs are all playing sports
Yeah, that's a good concept. That's
and
a
everything
great
like that. Yeah,
concept.
and I think they just I need to like look into it more, but I think they just opened an official bar
Okay.
like called Q for queer, like a queer bar in Westport. And so I
That's
think they're
dope.
developing that right now.
Yeah. I think I've only been to one gay bar in Kansas City, and I want to say it's Missy B's, but that is that right?
Missy B's is probably one of the biggest, like at least most well-known
Yeah,
queer bars. There's also, I think, there's a lot.
yeah, I'm sure there
I've
is.
only been to like two, which is
Yeah.
like Missy B's, and there's a bar called Woody's, I think, which is more
Mm,
of a bar than like a club.
mm.
So
Yeah, I haven't found like a lot of bars or clubs like when you go in and like to see a lot of queer people of color
mm-hmm.
like and like my Missy B's experience I was the same way. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know like you living there, did you have like experience of like seeing more queer people of color than
Then
you
in
usually
Wichita,
yeah, than you usually do.
no, I think the ratio still kind of applies. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's like majority white and then like a little sprinkling of color there.
Yeah.
And so it's just the sample size is bigger, but then
Right.
it's still the same like ratio.
Yeah. Being like a queer Asian, do you feel like there's certain um culture barriers that you face that other people of color do not?
um Not necessarily.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I mean, in the Asian community, at least what I've experienced, it's more keep to yourself if you
Mm,
have something different about yourself. And
okay.
so, like, is it oppressive? Technically, but like, you aren't really discouraged from doing that, but it's more so, I think I had adopted more like Western ideology in terms of that. So it was like, oh, if I come out, then that's like end all be all. Like that's
Mm,
the worst thing I could possibly do to myself. But in the Asian community, it's not necessarily unacceptable,
mm-hmm.
but it's not necessarily acceptable. It's just like kind of keep to yourself. Like
Yeah. It's like don't
there's
talk about it.
kind kind of like mental health. Ooh, woo, that's a whole different subject.
Yeah.
But in terms of queerness, I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, we knew people who were queer, and like there were people that went to our Buddhist temple that were queer, and so like my parents seemed okay with that. There,
Mm,
I think like the mentality is like it's okay as long as my kids aren't that way,
yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyone but us.
Hmm.
Yeah. You mentioned Buddhism. Do you still practice now?
Yes and no. I mean, I try to go as much as possible to temple, but I haven't like it's always sort of irked me when people are like, "Oh, I'm a devout like X religion," because I'm
Mm,
just like, so do you go because you want to go, or do you go because you want people to know you want to go?
yeah.
And so for me, Buddhism now is more just how I live rather than like me having to go to a temple every single weekend and pray and everything like that. And so it's more of like how I live, like a lifestyle, like a just a way of life rather than like my religion.
Yeah.
And so
Uh,
it's I take comfort in it sometimes because I mean sometimes things get hard and there's certain readings or there's certain like chants that I still remember growing up with that kind of help calm me down a little bit. So it's nice.
Yeah, that's always good. I think finding that spirituality is really needed to like navigate like because it's hard out here. So to not search for something to like help with guidance, it can be difficult to have to do that. Um, how are you comfortable with walking in your authentic self, just like on a regular basis?
Uh, I don't really not to be one of those people that are like, oh, like I'm not one of those queers who are just rainbows and they look like clowns and everything like that. No, I'm not one of those people. But like I'm comfortable just dressing like this t-shirt and shorts and like going out. And so like some like I have my ears pierced now and so I'm trying to eventually heal them so I can, start wearing more earrings that I've collected over the years because I have over a dozen pair of earrings that I've bought and I can't wear them because I didn't have pierced ears.
You just knew you wanted to get your
I
ears
was
pierced
like,
one day.
this is why I'm queer. No. And now so is just like as a gay man, like I walk around, I don't advertise it
Hmm.
necessarily, but I mean my friends are like, I mean, it's the way you walk, it's the way you talk. Like it's
Mm.
it comes out eventually, but I don't really necessarily pretend to be straight
Hmm.
either, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to hide it, but I'm also not like obviously gay in some situations. Sometimes I am apparently.
Yeah.
And so it's just I just live me. Like
Yeah.
I don't
So you're
really.
yourself all the
Hmm.
time. Then you
Hmm.
feel like. Do you have you had any situations or experiences where you felt like you said you never feel like you act straight, but that you did feel like present yourself in a minute. Okay. Let
I
me.
mean, yes, because you kind of have to feel it out at new jobs, and I've had
Okay.
a
So.
lot of new jobs in the past 5 years or so since, especially since COVID. And so I'll definitely be a little bit more shielded at first and be
Hmm.
like, "Hi, my name is Jan.
Yeah.
I am an ambiguously straight man."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then eventually be like, hey.
Right, yeah. So you do have to present it in a different way, like your personality, in certain situations. And when do you feel like open up? Like when is a moment to where like you feel comfortable and to be like, okay, I can be myself around this person.
So it's, I feel, I know that we're like very millennial. Well, I guess we're kind of in the middle, right?
Yeah, I would say
We're like
so.
zillennials because
Hmm.
we're in that kind of transition period between the two. Um, I go off of vibes
Yeah.
because if I feel like, oh, like in conversation, like, oh, like if I feel like you're supportive of what I am, then I'll slip in like a joke or something and like be like,
Yeah.
because I remember there was one point, I forgot what job it was, but it was me and my coworkers were just like talking, and one of them had like had just gotten like engaged, I think. And she was like, "Oh yeah, like I think we're probably gonna try for children." And so I was like, I was pretty comfortable with them at the time. So I was like, I mean, I've tried for children a lot in the past, but it doesn't really work out. And they're like, "Why?" And I was like, hmm? And they're like, "Ah."
That's funny.
And so they're like, "Oh." And I was like, "Really?"
Yeah, just like throw it in there every
Hmm.
now. Yeah, that is
Make it fun.
yeah, for sure. Because you definitely have to like feel it out too, for sure. Because you never know. Like,
Mhm.
with me personally, I'm kind of like, I think it's kind of obvious. In certain situations, I mean, there are mass presenting women that are not part of the community, but
Mhm.
I don't really hide it in anything. So I don't feel it out really. I'm just this is
Here I
me.
am. Yeah.
This is me. Um, there was a point in time where I wasn't like that. Like I would, I don't know. I've always dressed this way, but just not like with a partner or. I was scared to hold hands like in
Hmm.
public for a while. What was your situation of like that in public versus private?
I don't like PDA for
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
Everyone else, I don't care. But for myself, I'm like, ooh, ooh,
yeah.
ooh.
And do you think that is because of what others might say, or do you think that's just
I
in
think
general?
for me, like, I used to think that that was like very like, oh, like how like homophobic of myself
Mhm.
to like it's internalized homophobia.
Yeah.
But then I started slowly learned I was like, I just don't like PDA. Like I just
Yeah.
don't like being like affectionate in public at all. I think I'm coming more around to it now. So I mean, everything can change all the time,
Yeah.
and so typically, yeah, it's I'm like, nope, like don't touch me. We're walking next to each other. I'll hold your hand,
Yeah.
but don't touch me.
Yeah. That's as far as it goes. Yeah. Have you dated women in the past? Like you said, you're bisexual.
Ooh, I've tried.
Yeah.
In high school, oh my God, I tried to ask so many girls out and it never worked out.
Yeah.
I dated one girl for 3 days.
3 days.
Hmm. That was an
Why do you
experience.
like? Do you think like you just because you knew like this isn't like emotionally, physically, we're not just connecting.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I never really dated in high school, so I
Mm.
didn't. I didn't date technically until my senior year of college, senior year of high school, and that's a story on its own, which I'll tell after. But like in terms of most of my high school, like time in high school, I tried to date so many girls. Like I would ask girls out, and like I would go to like prom and homecoming
Mm.
with girls, and be like straight, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
I never really dated a girl. And then when I did date that girl for like 3 days, um, I don't know. Like it ended. I never knew exactly why it ended. And then the week after, she was like, "By the way, can you introduce me to like one of my really attractive friends?" I was like, "Huh, okay."
Just trying to get through me to get to
I
them.
don't even know at this point. And like at this point, I'm like, it happened,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't devastating.
Yeah.
Um, but when I was like the first time I dated in high school was technically with that guy, and it was funny because it was after Christmas on my senior year. My friend was like, "Here, I have a present for you on your phone," and she downloaded Grinder.
This was like the first person that you had told. Did you know what it was at the time? Like it.
So I knew what it was. I'd heard of it, and so this friend was like probably one of the very few people that knew I was like at least queer. I didn't know I was like I didn't come out as queer or anything to them, but she was like, "You like men?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." But then I didn't officially come out until like college. And so she's like, "Here's Grinder," and I was like, "Okay." And so I started dating this guy that was going to KU. It only lasted like a month, and
Mhm.
so that led to the me coming out to my mom thing.
Right.
And so that was really my only dating experience. And then I don't know,
You said you didn't date until your senior year, and that's a whole story in itself. Why?
like the Grinder thing.
Oh, okay.
I mean, long story short, I like we went on a few dates because he was in college, and at the time I was like, "Oh, this is cool. I'm dating a college guy." Now looking back, I'm like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Because I was
for
like,
real.
because I was 18 and he was like 24 at the time, and
Oh
so
wow. Yeah.
now looking,
Technically, that was legal.
it was
Yeah,
legal, and
yeah,
so but now
18.
looking back, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
why? Okay. And so I found out. So I stayed on Grindr even though I was dating him, but not to like hook up or anything like that. I was just making friends because I had made a couple friends just talking around. And this guy was like, because I changed my profile picture, and he was like, this other guy was like, "Is that your boyfriend?" I was like, "Yeah." Like we just started dating. Like I'm so happy right now. He's like, "You know, he uses a different app to like talk to to guys, right?" And I was like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah, he like shares his nudes and stuff and everything." I'm like, "Oh." And so
Uh,
my like 18-year-old brain at the time was like, "Oh, I don't know how to process this," and so I didn't like eat or
right.
anything for
Yeah.
like 3 days.
Yeah. Older men getting like always 18. Yeah.
You want to know
That's
something else? Vietnamese, Chinese, white,
uh
international studies, concentration in Mandarin, red flags everywhere.
dang. Dang.
Now looking back, I know, but like back then, I was like, I'm dating a college guy. I'm
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. Well, I'm sorry, like that was your first experience, so that was like into like the gay scene, and that was
Mhm.
how did you navigate after that?
Oh,
Like
I was a hoe.
uh, you said okay.
I was like, this is fun. No, like I had that was like my host season, I guess,
Yeah.
that summer after high school. Shout out to Katy Perry who makes bad music now. But it was kind of like my way of trying to sort of process that and
Mhm.
sort of see like what my worth was because I felt pretty worthless after that. Because it was like obviously I'm not good enough
Mhm.
to like satisfy someone else, and so I kind of like there was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. I was not. I was safe,
Mhm.
but I should not have been in those situations at 18 years old.
Yeah.
And
And
so that was that summer, and then like once I got into college, I didn't really do anything. So
mhm. Yeah, it is like I mean, like you said, you were so young, you got your heart broken, and um, I mean,
that
you
was a
didn't know what else. But you did say you were safe. How did you learn about like being safe, and like who taught you that? Was there someone that?
I mean, technically, it was like sex ed back in middle school that
Yeah.
like kind of taught me that because, um, I mean, I know that a lot of people like growing up, they learn from like porn, and so they learn like not necessarily to be safe, but like how people think pleasure should be. But
Hmm.
I was always very adamant in terms of like condoms, just because you never know. Like
Right.
even if
Yeah.
your partner's like, "Oh, I'm fine," it's like, "Oh no," you find out later they're not.
Yeah.
And so it was just always in the back of my head, like the fear of like having like some sort of disease or some sort of like infection. And so I was like, I don't want to have to explain that to anyone or like a doctor. And so
Yeah.
that's why I kind of just stuck to that and made sure that I was like, you're using a condom. I'm using a condom. Woo.
Yeah. Well, that's good that you put that in there because I mean, not being a hoe,
Hmm.
you can get things like so it's good that you were like being safe though with it
Hmm.
in that same
And some
sense.
people enjoyed not using protection, which
Yeah.
is all power to them. I can't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that is for some people, but yeah, it is good that you were able to do that. And just I don't know if like it is easier like men like you do learn about it in your sex ed for like women. I didn't
You don't
know.
learn jack shit.
I didn't know what a female condom was till like I never seen one until like probably like 2 months ago.
Really?
Like an actual female condom. Although I've never had sex with like a man.
Hmm.
But I like having sexual relationships with partners like that wasn't ever like a thing that
Hmm.
I even thought about.
You're like,
Like, yeah.
hmm.
But then I seen them and I'm just like, I don't understand how they even work. Like,
Hmm.
it's weird. Like, it's so big. Have you seen one
Hmm.
before? Yeah, I'm just,
Because it's like there's like the structured part of it, and then there's
yeah.
like you have to put it in, and like there's another structured part
Yeah.
of
And
it.
then
So
I'm
it's
like,
like
what, like, how often do these get stuck? Literally, like, you would think it
you have to
gets
like
stuck in there. Yeah, I don't know. It was just, there was a lot. Like I was like mind blown. I was like, man, why? And I don't remember learning that in sex ed of
Mm-mm.
like a female condom. Like that wasn't. I don't remember learning about a female. I remember learning about those type of condoms, but not a female condom.
I think it was mentioned when I was going through sex ed, but it wasn't like, here's a banana and a
Yeah.
condom, and like you put the condom on.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's just
Yeah.
like,
Huh.
maybe we should step that up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. But I was just like, man, why am I just now like seeing this? And it was at like one of these it was like a HIV testing
Mhm.
thing. So like even like the table, not every table had it. There was only one table that had the female condom. So I'm just like, even in this setting, like you
It's
guys
not being
aren't even,
provided.
yeah, like you guys
Hmm.
aren't providing for like everybody. So yeah, I
Damn.
think there is just like a lack of that in that situation. I would be curious to like see.
Expand that more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like to see like the statistics, like how many people have actually seen a female condom. Like, am I the only one? Like, am I out of the loop now, or is this like an actual thing?
Hmm.
But you have, so it's like, huh. Where did you see one at? Like
I
in.
looked it up because I was just like, I remember it was like what in like college. I was like, I know there's male condoms. Is there a female condom? I was just out of curiosity because
Yeah.
it was just one of those nights where I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want to study, and so I'm just gonna look stuff up on the internet.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
was like, oh,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. So you found that on your own, so I don't feel as bad. You found it out on your own.
Yeah,
Oh
I
man.
was not taught it. I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So what's your dating life now?
I mean, since I've been in Casey, I haven't really I dated two guys.
Mhm.
I mean, I've never really had a whole lot of luck with guys.
What's
Um,
your way of finding it? Just Grinder, or is there other ways that?
so let's see. In the past, it was Grinder, and then Tinder for a little bit, and I tried like Bumble, I think. Although shout out to Bumble BFF at least. Have you ever looked at that?
No, I
It's really
haven't.
fun. It's like
I've
dating,
heard of
but you
it.
find friends, and I found a really good friend that I ride motorcycles with up in Casey. But like I used those dating apps a lot, but then like eventually you just find the same people over and over again, even if you reset it and everything like that. And so I think since end of June, like early July, I haven't been on any apps. I'm just like, I'm just gonna make money and pay
Yeah.
for like blind boxes and
Yeah.
stuff that I like.
Well, I'll tell you what. So my guest told me to tell people to try this. So you're in a grocery store. You see someone that you're attracted to, whatever aisle it may be. Then you find ingredients to cook something on that aisle, and you're like, oh, acting like helpless, like you don't know, like, oh, do you know where
Where's
this?
this?
Yeah, and then it's like asking them, oh, well, what are you doing tonight? Can I cook you dinner? And then seeing where it goes from there. So if you're bold enough to do
Mhm.
something like that instead of the dating apps, there's a way to do
That's true.
it.
I mean, my friend Desi and I, like, we said so when we moved in together in May, but we didn't really do much. But I think now we're gonna try to like go out at least once a month just to
Mhm.
like see people.
Yeah, especially you're in a new city. And like you said, Kansas City's big.
Hmm.
So I'm sure you can find
Do
a lot
something,
to
yeah.
do.
But yeah, I don't know. Um, Not to go down a rabbit hole, but sometimes my little conspiracy theory brain is like, oh, like I'm not really getting a lot of traction on dating apps because I'm no longer like a skinny, like Asian boy.
Mm,
And that's a lot of what happened when I was a hoe that I
mm.
didn't think about at the time because I was just like, oh, like they're attracted to me, and it's like, no, they're old white men who are attracted to young Asian boys.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so the realization was like, woo. And
Jeez.
I didn't die, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, I'm an average sized
So when
guy
I
now.
asked earlier, do you feel like there's certain not there's not necessarily culture barriers like being a queer Asian, but just like being a queer Asian, like those are certain situations that you've had to deal with, like you've experienced the fetishes of white men on you because you're an Asian.
Yeah, I mean, Back when I was on Grinder, I got a lot of messages that was like, "Hey, are you good at massages?" And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
"Yeah, but like not for you."
Ah, that's yeah.
Yeah. Or like, how hairy or how hairless are you? And I was like, I don't know. I don't hair or anything. It's a weird question to ask.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Man, people are wild.
I
People
don't.
are racist.
Right. I don't have a lot of body hair, but damn,
Ah.
get off me.
So so do you feel like how have you like navigated that? Like have you called people out on it? Like what do you like do you just like ignore it? Like
I just ignored it in the past. I mean, now I'm not even on any of those apps anymore,
mm-hmm,
so I'm just like, I don't care. Like,
mm-hmm,
I don't deal with it anymore.
yeah.
Well, because I mean, that kind of stems a little bit from, the prospect of anonymity,
Mm,
because everyone can hide behind a screen and be like,
yeah.
"Oh, you're this slur, you're that slur." Like, and you can't find me because I don't, you don't know
Yeah.
who I am. And so I feel like people tend to get very brave when they feel like there's no consequences. Or they don't even know that there's consequences. And so
Yeah.
they're just saying what's on the top of their head, which is something that's been learned and that's something that's been taught to them, because no one's born predisposed to racism or predisposed to homophobia, transphobia. And so they had to have learned that somewhere. But it's, I feel like it's the sort of everyday struggle and conversation of, well, then who teaches them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because, like, I'm sure as a queer black person, like, you don't want to go around having to explain, like, this is what a black person goes through, this is what a black, like, queer person goes through, this is what a queer black person goes through,
Mm-hmm.
and like vice versa for anyone that who's in like a marginalized community. But then at the same time, we're the ones with the experience, so who should be teaching these people how to navigate spaces that they weren't native into?
Yeah.
And so it's that's a whole other conversation, because
Yeah.
it's just like, yes, it'd be nice for people to learn, but then eventually the question becomes who teaches.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah, and like this podcast, like I wanted it to be like for the people of color because like I feel like we all have like these different experiences of just like within the queer community, like you are really experiencing right like your experience that you're telling that don't get told, like they don't get seen. So like you said, where does it like you telling your story and your experiences in hope like for Queen Talk is in hopes of like people listening to this become aware like this is like an educational piece too. Like people ask me like why like why am I excluding like white queer people? And it's not that I'm like excluding them at all. Like this is still for them. Like this conversation is for them. This specifically is for them. So like um I think like they're incorporated just in a different way that they're not used to.
Yeah.
And this is why like our stories and experiences don't often get heard and honestly like this is my first time hearing like that this was like a fetish of like the white man towards Asian men. So like this is like this is information that I'm learning too, and so like being more aware of that and just like being having these stories being told to know like and you're not alone, like you're not alone, someone watching this is going to like be like man, and they could be younger too and just like they didn't know that but now they'll know before they enter that space and know like the ideas that some of these people may have. So it's good that you're being vulnerable and opening up and letting people in and telling us that. So
Be a safe hoe.
yes, if you're gonna be a
If you're
hoe,
gonna be hoe,
yeah,
you don't have to be.
be a safe hoe. Yeah, that's that's wild though. And now I don't know. I wouldn't date a white man. No, I wouldn't like, but maybe
I'm open to it, but
yeah,
it's just it has to be very like specific, I would say.
yeah.
Um, I mean, they would just have to be cognizant of the differences that our experiences like give us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah, like that is a great actually question to ask. So just like with those experiences with white men that you have, like, and it being so predominantly white in the queer spaces that you're in, do you have you dated white men still? Do you
Yes
um
and no.
mhm. Do you
I
see
I
yourself
might be
there?
talking to one right now.
Okay.
But I mean, it's just it's a I hate like generalizing.
Mhm.
And so I just take it by case thing. Like
Mhm.
if we're cool, we're cool. But like if you're part of a certain community, then I don't really care. As long as it just doesn't bleed into like that sort of close-minded ideology doesn't bleed into what our conversations are, I'm fine with it. Or if like honestly, people can be racist even if they're not white.
Mhm.
So it's just
Yeah.
like as long as you're open-minded and as long as you kind of keep that open channel of communication, I think it that allows for so much more conversation, for so much more learning, for so much more opportunity for people to be more informed. I mean, if you go into something and just being like, oh, no one's gonna like me because I'm this or because they're that, it's like
Yeah.
you close off that
Yeah.
channel. Like
Yeah.
you can't
But
expect people
yeah. But
to
I think
accommodate
it's
you.
for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
like in my experience of just like dating, because I've dated white women in the
Mm-hmm.
past, and now just like being older and just like I don't know personally if I like I'm in a happy relationship right now, but just like if I would ever be able to just like date a white person just because of the experiences that I face and just
Mm-hmm.
like the understanding that um I get just like in my own home.
Mm-hmm.
Like not having to explain things or
Yeah.
conversations that we have like it's fully understood and not like they live the life that I so like there's just certain things that when I'm at home I'm fully 100% comfortable in my own home and
Mm-hmm.
that's just my personal experience and that's also just because of the people that I've dated in the past I'm sure like it's been bad, but like that's just for me. Just like I feel like 100% comfortable, and just like especially with everything that happens, just like
Mm-hmm.
um, race wise, and so just like having that heavy stuff happen, and just like having those conversations with my partner now are completely different than what they were in the past of
Mm-hmm.
just partners. So it's just different to navigate. So
I don't know.
yeah, I think it's just it's different though. It's different,
Yeah. I
but
mean, circling back to like the not really coming out, but just like being comfortable with my friends and such. I mean, I fucked up a lot because I think in college, I mean, you saw it when I was at the internship. Or maybe you didn't see it, I don't know. But I was very full of myself. I was very like I'm great. I'm like not well, at the time I was like I'm better than everyone else, but I didn't like advertise it as such. I was just like, "Oh, I'm just self-confident." And so I stepped on a lot of toes back when I was like kind of getting more comfortable with myself. Um, and so I mean, on my journey to kind of discovering who I was and what I was comfortable with, I made a lot of people uncomfortable. I mean, like at one point I like made this guy that I thought or maybe hoped was queer um very uncomfortable, and like we don't talk till this day because of it, because I at the time I thought that he was just overreacting and stuff like that, and so it's just um I don't know, like I've grown a lot since then. I've come to realize like maybe I should, consider other people's feelings more. But yeah, it was just like a consequence of my actions was that we don't talk anymore. Like we were very very close friends, but then I kind of ruined it because I was hoping that he would be queer like me. Um, or another relationship. situationship that I had. Um, I revealed some not so public information about them to some of my other friends. And that ended up being a whole situation that I now looking like in the moment I was like, oh, like I'm fine, like I didn't do anything wrong. But looking back, I was like, oh my god, what the fuck? And so it's been a learning experience in terms of just because like I mean obviously there's no natural crash course of being straight because I mean you have to and that's why we have incels. But
That's what we have. What?
incels. But like, I mean, everything's a learning experience, and like, I am grateful to those who have had to deal with me because I was pretty insufferable for a long time, and I probably still am right now to some people. But it's been a learning experience. It's not everyone has the same experience, but my God, do we learn?
Yeah. Why do you feel like what do you feel like you learned from those experiences?
Not to hold myself at too high of a pedestal because at the time I was like, look at me, like I'm a great college student with 1 point like a 2 point something GPA. And so I think at the time I was just very overconfident in myself in terms of like not necessarily being queer, but just being like a person. And so um I was like on top of the world and everything like that. And then like have you ever heard the audio that's like nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys? That was me. That was me, unfortunately. And so
Okay.
it took a very long conversation with one of my friends. And he was like, hey, like you need to slow down. You need to kind of look around and see how people react to what you're doing and what you're saying. Because if you don't, you're going to lose a lot of friends. And I did. I lost a lot of friends because of just being a jackass. And so, um,
Shout out to that friend that called you in on that though. Like that's not easy to be able
mhm,
to do that, especially like if you're an asshole.
mhm.
How did you like take that conversation when someone told you that?
I was in denial at first, honestly, because I was like, no, that's fine. Like people are fine. People still like me. But then like I started because at the same time was when I graduated, but then COVID also hit, so like people started getting more isolated, and so the combination of not being in college, not seeing people every day anymore, and having to go virtual for a lot of things, kind of finally like reined in my perspective of like, oh, like I'm not necessarily friends with these people like I think or like that they are. They just see me every day. And so they know me.
Yeah.
And so like it was kind of a harsh reality check, but I needed it
Yeah, you literally had
because
to sit in it with COVID, like
hmm
just sit in all the things that you've done, and how have you grown since then? Would you say?
since then, I mean, I'm definitely more cognizant of how I interact with people. Um, I think one thing that I didn't like recognize very was body language and just honestly information. Um, I'm much more closed off when it comes to other people's like information that like I don't know if they wanted to be shared or not. The thing that I shared was definitely not okay to share. Um, and so it's just I'm more.
Have you talked to the person since then, or have you relayed any messages to this person yet?
I have. I've tried, and I think they're not. They're still hurt by what I did, and so it's completely fair that they don't want to talk to me because I wouldn't want to talk to me if I did that to
Right,
me.
right. I just didn't know if like you've actually like just actually apologized to this person and said
I
that.
I have attempted to,
Okay.
but I don't think honestly what I did to those people are, in my opinion, probably past the point of apology.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it's been years and years now. This has been. what, over 5 years now. And so, I mean, from what I can see, they're happy with their life, and I'm okay with my life at the moment. And so I sometimes I wish that we could at least just have me be able to apologize, but at the same time that would just be serving me.
Right.
That
Yeah.
wouldn't really serve any
I
other
was just say
purpose.
like as long as you've said your piece on
Hmm.
what they do with that, then that's on them. Like you just have to take that. But I just want to
It's
make
still
sure.
on me what I did though.
What did you say?
I was like, it's still on me what I did though.
Yeah, yeah. But it's good that you're like owning it though. I mean, I know for a lot of people, ego can get in the way. Just stay in your ways and not apologize and continue just to be the hateful person that you were.
Mm,
So it's good that you're growing. Like I feel like
trying to.
yeah, I feel like you owning it and admitting it and admitting that you want to grow is growth. Like I feel
Mm,
like that in itself is like growing. And
mm,
yeah, like what you did may have been hurtful, but again, just like still saying it, like you owning it and grow past it. Like
mm.
that's what you're doing. So
Yeah.
that's good. What what would you tell someone that may be stuck in their ways?
I don't think there's really anything to tell. Like, I mean, what my friend told me is just to pull my head out my ass. But it's hard. It's not an easy process. I'm still learning to this day, and I think that's kind of part of it because before I was like, oh, I'm fine. I don't need to learn anything else. Like I'm cool. Like I'm part of the queer community. I'm cognizant of my own identity, and I'm like, no, I wasn't. Like looking back now, I'm like, what the fuck were you talking about? And so it's just like eventually there comes a time where you have to kind of sit down with yourself and be like, how do I want to present myself so that I can live my life as happily as I can, but also not step on other people's toes in the process or step on their heads in some cases too. And so it's a hard thing to kind of recognize like maybe I'm not as nice of a person as I thought I was. And maybe I was really realistically just taking advantage of other people's kindness to bolster my own thoughts of myself. Because, I mean, I've always been told that I'm like a nice person, but then I had to really dial it back and be like, am I nice because I'm nice, or am I nice because I want people to like me?
Yeah, it's like as you get older, you come to those like
Mm-hmm.
realizations, and I think like you said, like COVID, it hit you like
Ooh.
during that time, so like you really had to sit in it, and I think a lot of people felt the same way of just like during that period of time, just like looking back on like not just like my relationships with friends, but
Mm-hmm.
just like with jobs and with yourself and
Mm-hmm.
just like self care. I think there was a lot of realization during the COVID period of time, and a lot of growth came from it, and a lot of people declined from it. But it was a lot of people sitting in those thoughts. So it was good that you did that, and like I said, you're continuing to grow. So one last thing is just like, what would you like to leave the audience with today?
Don't be a jerk. Well, and just not necessarily that, but it's just if it's safe to, if it's safe for you to do so, then live your authentic life. If it's not safe, try to make peace with that for at least the time being until you are safe. Um, Not everyone has that luxury, unfortunately, and so it's hard to kind of navigate spaces that you aren't welcome in. Um, but hopefully the shell doesn't really become like a wall because that's really hard to tear down eventually. Um, I used to, you know, think that being gay was a bad thing, and like I mean that's what a lot of people think because that's what they're taught and that's what's learned. But eventually, loving yourself is such a better option than hating yourself because the latter can lead to such terrible, terrible things and terrible thoughts in your head that um, can manifest into more physical and um, other mental, you know, issues and barriers, really. And so be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your own feelings in like your own spaces, and just try to be a bit like try to just constantly improve rather than just being like, I'm great, I'm fine, everyone else is bad.
Just stagnant. Just like I said earlier, just stuck in your ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some people can just be so complacent, just like this is how I am, this is how I got by, and I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing fine just until then.
If you
Like,
don't like me, that's your problem. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's a two-way street.
right, right. Thank you for joining me today on
Yeah,
Kueen Talk. Getting you in today. I'm so glad we made it work. I've been trying to get you on here
a minute.
yeah, for a while now. So thank you for coming on such short notice. And your story is like there was a lot of learning and educational stuff and
Stupidness.
part of your process, like your journey. A lot of people are gonna relate to this,
Mm-hmm.
and some people are gonna have some realization just like within themselves. They're like, man, maybe I am an asshole. Like maybe this is me too, and I gotta learn and grow. So I just want to thank you for your vulnerability and coming on here and owning up to it, like your faults and just like growing from them. So kudos to you, and I hope the journey continues. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Technical
Jan, thank
difficulties.
you for tuning in to another episode of Kueen Talk. You guys, yeah, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe button, comment. Let us know what you think of this episode. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit that link below if you want to be a guest. If you guys have any questions, please hit that link as below as well. Always looking for questions to ask the guests. And as always, family, friends, strangers, love. Be nice. Be nice.